What is suffering? This question came up in the small group, and it comes up frequently. We all know what it is. We all know the experience of it. I think a translation to the word unsatisfactoriness is probably the most accurate in my experience. Unsatisfactoriness. And there's a lot of social convention in contemporary society that says the way to respond to unsatisfactoriness is control. Take control of your life. Make it satisfying. Get the things that will satisfy you. And it seems like a reasonable approach, but it's really looking away from the unsatisfactoriness. Or it's saying, ultimately, let's paint over it, turn away from it, or like drown it out with satisfactoriness of other kinds. But none of those ways of dealing with it are ultimately fruitful. They don't really lead to satisfactoriness. They don't lead to a deep and pervasive trust in being alive, in my experience. So at some point we realize that the constant seeking for the next thing and being disappointed, but then convincing ourselves, well, it's just the next thing after that. Realizing that just doesn't work. Doesn't work in any area of life, right? Then we turn toward the unsatisfactoriness and go, what is this? Is this here to show me something? Tell me something? We might turn toward it and want to heal it, fix it, resolve it, or get rid of it. And all those are okay. That's a pretty natural inclination. But if we're able to get close enough to it, however that is for you, however it feels for you to feel that something isn't quite right with your experience, with yourself, with life, you get close enough to it, you'll start to have a different relationship with it, such that it's not something to get rid of. Really not even something to transform. More of a portal or a catalyst, entry point. And doing that, entering directly into the unsatisfactoriness is not a complicated act. It's actually a very simple act. Exquisitely simple. It's so simple that it's elusive because the mind is not simple. The mind wants strategies, maps, realities, mechanisms, approaches. But none of those really fit with at least my experience of turning directly toward the unsatisfactoriness because it's so simple, actually. And often it plays out like this. We kind of turn toward it. We know it's there. We're curious about it. Take up spiritual practices. Take up all kinds of practices, somatic practices, therapy approaches, and so forth. And we're kind of turning toward it. But there's still something that does not want to really, really turn toward it, right? That little bit of like doubt or resistance that we're still identified with. That we actually believe it's there as a barrier. It's not, but we believe it is because it feels like us, feels like me, right? It's buried so deeply in the identity structure. It's not consciously me. You have to dig for it or inquire or have a disruption in your life for it to reveal itself. That, oh my gosh, that's the final doubt, the final barrier that says, I don't want to turn toward that. And when that doubt is toppled, you realize you do want to turn toward that. In fact, that's all you've ever wanted to do. Like more than anything. And that's where it's revealed to be an extremely simple act, a very simple movement, not complicated. And not only is it simple and uncomplicated, I might say it's the only thing that you don't need a process for or a strategy for, paradoxically. That feels like grace. That somewhere inside of you, maybe in the deepest part of you, there's a seed or a possibility that gives you the opportunity to do this. It's something like looking in the last place that you want to look. And what I'm talking about, if you're trying to process it cognitively and compare it to your own beliefs about all of this, that's not exactly the right approach. It'd be more like feeling into what I'm saying, finding the truth of it in you, in whatever version is in you, right? I mean, there are endless numbers of trees, apple trees, right? They have endless numbers of seeds, or any kind of tree has endless numbers of seeds that grow the same type of tree, but the soil is different. The seed structure and age is different, whatever. Everything's slightly different. So it's different in every person a little bit, but the seed is the seed, and you have that ability to turn toward it or to let it sprout, so to speak. And the mind that seeks a future creates a future and then feels like it's seeking a future, regardless of what flavor that takes, whether it's spiritual or non-spiritual or whatever, is actually a bit of a hypnotic distraction from this turning toward that entry point. And as you mature in your intuition about this, then suffering in the usual connotation of the word stops being quite as accurate. It starts it's the same portal, it's the same entry point, but it starts to change in quality. It seems to have a different flavor to it. As I mentioned, it turns from something that feels like unsatisfactoriness that you want to do everything to avoid and build this life to get away from it, to something that you become curious about, to something you're looking directly at, and that now you're kind of fascinated with it, right? So there's quite a transformation there. You could say once you're really turned toward it, when you finally turn toward it, and yet, even when you have turned toward it, or you're turning toward it, there can be a lot of very strong habitual forces that are actually trying to make you run away from it still. You may feel fear. You may feel waves of fear. You may feel you will feel distractions, mind roads going in every direction. Like all that stuff will come, and yet you've turned toward it. It's here. It's not subject to all of that, actually. And that paradox is what I think is meant in Zen by the mu becoming the red hot iron ball that you can neither spit out nor swallow. And it's sort of a rite of passage to reach that, which is an act of surrender, but it's an act of surrender to your true nature, your deepest nature. That's a simple act of turning toward it. And in one way of speaking, once you've done that, I can't give you any advice, and no one can give you any advice, because you have to go on your intuition. It is your intuition, because your intuition is in alignment with your true nature. It is your true nature, and it will take you beyond all illusions, including probably the most fundamental illusion, which is the illusion of a self apart, a self in time, and so forth, a self with boundaries. So you will go on and you will be moving on intuition at some point. And many, many people in here have already gone through this. And then you can keep going through it for sure. There are deeper versions of it as well. But you will be going on intuition where you're off every map, right? Maps have value in this space at times. And at times you will be off the map and you'll know it. But with the maturity that I'm talking about, maturity just meaning you've walked to that edge so many times, you've worked through a lot of the repressed emotion, you've tamed the monster of thought to some degree to where you don't get so taken away by fearful thoughts and so forth. There will be this place of maturity where you can move on instinct. It will feel less like disorientation or confusion, and it will feel more like innocence and a spontaneous journey right into the unknown on a moment-to-moment basis. I think it's in one of the 10 Oxfording pictures, the Zen Oxfording pictures. It says, wherever one enters, one sees the head of the bull. It's just like that. Wherever you enter, and where you enter is where only you can enter. That's what I think that means. It means wherever you enter, there's 100 and how many people in here, we'll all enter in some sense in a different place, from a different aspect, from a different facet of the jewel. But wherever you enter, you will see the head of the bull. You'll know this beyond knowing. You'll know this beyond doubt. You'll know this beyond certainty. And the rest is trusting this to unfold as it will. Maybe I could call that staying in the gap. Maybe I could call that staying in innocence. Maybe I could call that staying nose to nose with the unknown, the mystery, the great mystery. But it feels like surrender. And what we find usually, well, I'm going to say always, unless I missed an exception, but I haven't seen an exception. What we find is that when we find that natural openness, when we find that natural catalyst and turn toward it and open, then anything that's hidden from us will be revealed, including pain, shame, doubt, fear. Not that we didn't experience those before, but now they tend to come in more raw forms, more pure forms. So we can be surprised. Many people are surprised at how intense emotions can become after a significant shift. And it's, of course, okay. But things become so immediate, singular, unfiltered, that it can take some time to adjust to that. this is to some degree, the shamanic realm where maps can be helpful sometimes, but they can also be misleading. They can become confusing. Self-deception can arise here easily. You start to become much more attuned with energies, attuned with just meaning like you can't ignore them. You feel intense energy, you feel a lot of energy moving through. You may experience spontaneous kriyas and kundalini and all of that. Christ said, in the world, but not of the world. Or at least I think the Thomas Gospel said that. And it's something like that, where the conventional life doesn't disappear. It may change, but it's not going to disappear. And yet, everything is different. Your subjective experience, to use a word for it, is very different and changing and evolving and shifting and unpredictable. That can be rather challenging to the old way of being, which was identified with thought, identified with paradigms, identified with timeline, identified with knowing who I am at all times and how I relate to everything around me. To that world, this sort of unpredictability, powerful energies moving through, learning to move on instinct can be really challenging. And I don't mean that to set out a road in front of you that you expect to have those challenges. It just tends to be challenging. And it really is a matter of identity. It's really where the identity finds itself. If the sense of identity finds itself in a very structured world of thought and concepts and so forth, that's a very narrow bandwidth of experience. And when that starts to break open to a very vast experience, the seeming struggle of identity can feel monumental, intense. I think that's the vast majority of what people talk about as like the ups and downs and meing and being and roller coaster of feeling complete presence and I'm enlightened, and then just total contraction and suffering again and, all the thoughts and stuff. So that kind of up and down and back and forth and roller coaster stuff. I think the majority of that really is ultimately letting go of the need for an identity structure. But the first part of it is the identity structure itself wavering between this extreme narrow bandwidth of thought and concept-based identity, reality, and this kind of blown open, intuitive, more perhaps feminine, movement of energy that is unbound and doesn't really live by the rules of that narrow bandwidth of mind-identified self or thought-identified self. Not only that, sometimes it can be so different. Everybody's a little different with this. I think some people have one foot in the shamanic realm from the time they're born already, but not everybody does. So for some people, this part is more, feels like you're actually moving into a lot more naturalness. For others, it can be really a struggle for a while. But it will settle out. And it's a matter of identity. As we, in very simple terms, see that the identity mechanism is just not needed. That's about as simply as I can put it. It's just not needed. But we've depended on it for stabilizing these ideas about time, self, other, problems, solutions, control, all of it. And even spiritual paradigms get all mixed into that, for sure. So we've come to convince ourselves that we are dependent upon all of that, those paradigms, those ways of seeing the world, those views. But we're really not, actually. Only to the degree that we feel like a separate self, are we? And so that all softens. And little by little, the seeming need for a separate identity structure will unwind, disentangle itself from the mere appearances of that is this, and at some point a pretty pervasive peace will result from that, and that's definitely possible for anyone here. I know several people here for whom that is already the case. It doesn't mean that shadow material could never show up. It doesn't mean that a contraction could never happen. But we can realize fruition of practice, fruition of realization, fruition of truth, fruition of turning toward that unsatisfactoriness with an open heart and being willing to go wherever it takes us. Through fruition of all of that is possible. And then you can be free and rid of the need to contemplate completion and coming and going and who am I and who am I not and where does practice end and where does practice begin. You can be free of all that, really. A kind of seamless clarity will emerge. And I want to say, to be clear, it's tricky to talk about this, but I want to be clear that the fluid clarity that I'm referring to, which is always available, always here, it's not a result of getting rid of anything. It really isn't. It's not a result of getting rid of afflictive emotions or dukkha or suffering or resistance. It's actually a result of seeing thoroughly and fully digesting that there's no identity structure for whom containment of all of that is a problem. Management of all of that is a problem. That was a long sentence. I'm not sure if I said that clearly. Yeah, so the clarity that results as a fruition of practice, as a fruition of the process of unbinding, is not a result of getting rid of anything. It's a result of seeing through the illusion of that which was taking a position in regard to everything. And the stronger energetically the energy is, the stronger the position taken often. In deeper realization, you'll come into these really intense spaces sometimes, energetically and emotionally and so forth. Raw fear, raw terror, very intense shame, different things like that can appear in deep shadow work. And at some point it will be realized none of those are actually problematic, really. And I mean problematic intellectually, emotionally, or physically. They're not. It's this sense of having to take a position in regard to them, which is very deeply rooted in the identity structure. That is seen through, and it doesn't need to function anymore. So containment is not necessary. Management is not necessary. Another way of saying this is we realize we have a pretty tremendous bandwidth for experience. We don't need to mitigate experience. We don't need to drop experience. We don't need to heal anything in particular. Those things could happen, but ultimately, the capacity is infinite. In regard to the illusory self. It's what's not there that is so poignant. This is why it's hard to talk about, though. The paradox of this is the physical body, the apparent physical body, still has limitations, but those aren't a problem now, and never were, actually. So the relative aspect now can be enjoyed. All of its quirkiness and fragility and so forth, physical fragility, and all the aches and pains and nausea and things that happen and diseases and birth and death, all of it can be fully enjoyed as cycles of nature, however you want to say it. So they were never the problem, although we can have massively powerful vasanas in relation to illness, pain. Many people do. Now, everyone that goes through this process will go through some of that for sure. Vasanas meaning like fixations around illnesses, pain, body morphology, sex, things that are physical. But when all is said and done, as far as the identity structure, you realize none of that was ever a problem. It wasn't a problem. It wasn't a problem that you, in the relative, were born, and in the relative, you will die. You're subject to illness, old age, and death, and so forth. None of that's a problem. But that won't be clear and lived. That won't be a lived experience until this is really sorted out in the absolute aspect at the identity level, in my experience, at least. So this last part will just be a kind of mini lecture or a few guiding points on resistance specifically, because it will come up. Many people have had it come up here. Many people are experiencing it right now, I'm sure. But when we're in retreat, conference, and so forth, that's fertile ground for resistance to come rearing its lovely head, right? So what do you do about it? What do you do with it? I think the first thing is just stop. Just allow yourself to stop with all of the usual habits, right? Because a lot of habitual responses and reactions are just they're just a sort of momentum, right? They're habit. So just stop for a minute. Notice the layers of resistance, and also notice any coping mechanisms that may be trying to rise up against and so forth. And just let whatever can stop right now, stop. Don't force anything to stop. Don't add resistance. Don't add control. But just allow anything that can stop right now to stop. And just see, just observe, feel, notice. And you may notice this, or you may not. It's okay. Either way. You may notice certain processes, certain kinds of a sense of rising up will stop, will slow down and just kind of stop. And then something will remain there. And that something that remains may still be uncomfortable. This is one way of recognizing resistance in its more raw form. You could call it like energetic resistance or energetic. It could feel restless too, restlessness. Notice when you let everything stop that can stop right now. You stop. Notice that. that energy is not in your control, simply not in your control. That's it. And if you let everything else stop, including the belief that it should be in control, including the ideas of what I need to do about it, including the reactions to it, the bracing, let all that stop. It's just what's left is energy. Maybe big energy, maybe intense. It may have a kind of quality of unpleasantness, and that's okay. Let it just be there, simply. And you may also find an ability to keep that, to let that stopping perpetuate, like it just keeps stopping. Because sometimes the rising up it kind of has a staccato effect or something, like keeps wanting to kind of try to come back. So just notice the stopping can be a sort of ongoing process of just letting go of anything that feels volitional. And then you'll notice what's not volitional. Feel it. Where is it felt? Is it felt in the chest, in the throat, in the gut, hands, feet, head? Is it felt in the whole body? Is it felt in the whole room? Is it felt in the entirety of the environment? Just feel it. Notice that there's nothing you can do about it. It's not in your control. And yet, you have complete access to feel it. Now, some thoughts may come, habitual thoughts that say, what do I do about this? Or this is too much. Or this has been here so long. How long will it be here, right? Just let those thoughts stop or let them dissipate. Don't push them away. But do notice that they are thoughts, because this is not in time. The energetic itself, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it's big, it's showing you what timelessness is right now, because it's here right now, right now, right now. You can explore the nuances of how resistance, or let's call it this energy moving through right now. We can explore the nuances of how it feels in all the subtle layers of experience, the subtle layers of identity, or maybe no identity, the subtle layers of the sense of beingness, or the sense of knowingness. How does it feel in the marrow, in the bones, in the tongue, in the throat? Just notice that. Take up the exploration naturally, simply, and spontaneously. And just don't add to it. Just don't make anything out of it. And don't try to control it. And once you've sat with it for a time, and you'll know how long, maybe could be a good part of a day, who knows? Sometimes this stuff sticks around for a while. But when you're really in it, and you know there's nowhere deeper you need to go, you're just there. You can ask, can I find a bit of love here? Can I find a bit of compassion naturally here in the experience itself? It might feel very dim at first, just like a glimmer. Or you may not even find it, and that's okay. It's a simple invitation is all it really is. It's a curiosity. It's an innocent query. And then sit with that for a while, however long you need to. And then from that, knowing there's nowhere you need to go beyond here, start to take in the sound, the birds, the fans, the hum or the ring. Take in the entirety of experience, including the visual patterns and colors, the light and dark.